The future we want, the UN we need. This is the reason why we are with you today with the UN family. Why I say family? Because this is what a family does. We sit together, we discuss the betterment of the future. Through this panel discussion, we're going to share ideas. We're going to learn about the UN from a personal perspective of the UN family. On the panel today, I have the honor and the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Laurent Moussango, who is the representative of the World Health Organization for Mauritius. Next to him we have Miss Céline Lemel, who is the responsible and the head of office for Mauritius and Seychelles for the International Organization for Migration. And then we have next to me Miss Christine Yumo-Tony, who is the UN resident coordinator for Mauritius and Seychelles of the UNRC, which is the United Nations Resident Coordinator. And then we have the pleasure of having Mrs. Amanda Serumaga, who is the UNDP Resident Representative for Mauritius and Seychelles. But we are not alone. We have two youngsters with us today. We have Miss Richa Lalchan, who's still a student, and then we have Mr. Zakir Karimji. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We start this panel discussion with Dr. Laurent Moussango, who I said is the representative of the World Health Organization in Mauritius. Dr. Laurent, welcome.
Thank you, Musa.
We are celebrating this year the 75th anniversary of the United Nations, but unfortunately it falls in the middle of a global pandemic, which is the COVID-19. We are all suffering from it, the world is suffering from it. In your opinion, and based on your experience, what were the biggest challenges and what do you think humanity learned from it?
Merci beaucoup, Micha, pour cette question importante. Je crois que la chose la plus importante qui a été un défi pour cette pandémie de Covid, c'était une maladie qui a surpris le monde. Une maladie qui a surpris le monde dans quel contexte? Il a surpris les politiciens, ils ne s'attendaient pas à ça. Il a surpris les prestataires de services. Déjà, nous-mêmes, les services de santé, on n'était pas préparés. Mais cette pandémie a surpris aussi la population. Qu'est-ce que veut dire surprendre la population? Surprendre la population en termes de temps, on pensait que c'est quelque chose qui allait prendre une petite période, une courte période, mais aussi en période de personnes atteintes. Il y a eu beaucoup de personnes qui ont été positives, mais il y a eu beaucoup de décès aussi. Donc cette surprise de la maladie qui continue même à donner des situations imprévues dans le futur, constitue le défi majeur que je peux considérer. Alors, cela a eu des conséquences. Des conséquences aussi qui ont surpris la population. Des conséquences sur le plan économique. Donc vous voyez tous les pays qui montrent que leur croissance économique est en train de chuter. Les conséquences sur le plan social. Sur le plan social, il y a eu des harcèlements au niveau de ménage, il y a eu des problèmes à cause du confinement, mais aussi sur le plan social parce que les gens ne savent pas sortir de leur ménage. Bien sûr, cette situation a créé des problèmes qui vont créer des problèmes dans le futur, parce que ce qui était prévu ne sera pas atteint comme cela a été prévu. Alors, qu'est-ce que nous devons faire? Si je passe à la deuxième question, pour le futur. Effectivement, à n'importe quel niveau, comme j'ai parlé des aspects politiques, des aspects sanitaires et des aspects communautaires, tout le monde doit se préparer pour le futur. Si je commence par les aspects politiques, il faut surtout que les politiciens savent que les pandémies ne doivent pas être considérées dans le cadre politique. Quand il s'agit d'une pandémie ou d'une épidémie, le pouvoir et l'opposition doivent travailler ensemble. Non seulement travailler ensemble, mais éviter les aspects de profiter de la situation des épidémies pour rendre des comptes de part et d'autre. Ça, c'est au niveau des aspects politiques. Au niveau des aspects sanitaires, on doit se préparer. Renforcer les systèmes de santé. Nous avons eu des pays qui n'avaient pas d'élus. Nous avons eu des pays qui n'avaient pas de matériel de protection pour les prestataires de santé. Et ces gens sont tombés malades. Nous avons eu des pays qui ne savaient pas communiquer les données ou les informations. Donc, le niveau sanitaire, on doit se préparer de façon globale pour qu'éventuellement, s'il y a encore une épidémie pareille, que les gens soient relativement prêts pour répondre de façon opportune. Et enfin, au niveau communautaire, il faut quand même avoir des réserves. Nous sommes tous là. Je ne sais pas si vous n'êtes pas préparé et que vous n'avez pas un salaire mensuel, si vous pourriez survenir à cette situation. Nous avons eu des situations où ils ont fait recours aux voisins ou au gouvernement, où ils ont été carrément en souffrance à cause de la non-préparation. Donc la préparation de la communauté doit se concentrer aussi à avoir quelques réserves. Je pense que je m'arrête.
Merci beaucoup le docteur Laurent, vous avez tout dit. Il faut se préparer à tout de nos jours. On continue la discussion d'aujourd'hui avec Madame Céline Lemel, qui est le Head of Office of International Organization for Migration. On parle souvent de ça, on entend dans les médias. Moi, j'ai une question qui m'est venue à l'esprit en écoutant le docteur Laurent Moussango. Dites-nous, Madame Céline, dites-nous, c'est quoi le succès qui vous tient à cœur quand vous pensez à l'International Organization for Migration, UN, et aussi on célèbre cette année le 75e anniversaire. C'est quoi le plus grand succès de ce qui s'est passé pendant 75 ans?
Merci beaucoup. Alors, effectivement, il y a eu beaucoup de choses qui ont été accomplies en 75 années. Je pense qu'il est important de revenir un petit peu en arrière et de réfléchir à voilà, comment le monde a évolué en 75 années. Nous sommes partis quand même dans un contexte très différent de naissance des Nations Unies, un contexte de guerre froide, décolonisation, de connaissance de différentes épidémies, de différentes maladies qui ont fait surface. Malheureusement, les guerres et les conflits n'ont pas cessé et nous avons également de nouveaux défis, les défis environnementaux, climatiques. Nous avons l'émergence de la technologie. Beaucoup de choses ont changé. Et je pense que une première chose et un premier succès est que les Nations Unies ont réussi à s'adapter et continuent d'ailleurs à s'adapter à ces changements, à travers notamment la création de nouvelles agences spécialisées, par exemple, notamment l'ONU-SIDA, l'ONU-Femmes, avec la recrudescence et la facilité de la mobilité. Donc l'Organisation internationale pour l'immigration a également rejoint le système des Nations Unies récemment, en 2016. Et donc voilà, cela marque quand même beaucoup de succès. Je pense que l'histoire des Nations Unies est aussi l'histoire de la collaboration entre les nations, puisque les Nations Unies sont, comme leur nom l'indique, la combinaison de l'ensemble de ses États membres. Donc ce qui est important aussi de noter, c'est que tous ces succès sont aussi un succès collectif qui marque l'importance de la solidarité et qui montre que véritablement c'est ensemble que nous arrivons à achever des choses positives. Évidemment, beaucoup de défis demeurent, comme je le disais, puisque des nouveaux défis apparaissent. Malheureusement, certains autres sont difficiles à résoudre, comme les conflits et les guerres. Mais c'est vraiment et véritablement à travers cette solidarité que nous arrivons à avancer. Je pense que les succès des Nations Unies ont également été reconnus globalement à travers notamment l'attribution du prix Nobel de paix pour les Nations Unies et son secrétaire général Kofi Annan en 2001, et plus récemment, donc cette année, pour le programme alimentaire mondial. Donc ce sont des succès collectifs des Nations Unies, mais j'insiste encore, c'est un succès, c'est vraiment de l'ensemble des États et qui montre que la solidarité, le multilatéralisme sont véritablement la solution.
Merci, merci beaucoup Madame Céline Lemel, qui est le Head of Office of International Organization for Migration. Thank you, Mrs. Céline Lemel. Now I turn myself to a person we just had a discussion with. We asked her, what do you exactly do? Now we're going to find out. We are going to speak to the representative of the UNDP, which is the Development Program of the United Nations. We have Mrs. Amanda Serumaga. Welcome. Mrs. Amanda, can you please tell us more about how you got involved in the UN? And in your opinion and from your experience from all these years, what makes it a great organization for people to look up to?
No, thanks for the question. I think I want to echo some of the things that my colleague Celine has said, which are around collectivity. But getting to the first part of the question, how did I join the UN? I started off my early life as a lawyer, private practice, helping poor communities, focused on basically what we call poverty law. And over time it became clear that really a lot of the problems that you see at an individual level have actually structural problems. So when you're talking about fair housing, someone is fighting with their landlord, it's often that's a very localized fight, but really the bigger question is that the relationship between landlords and tenants. And so I became more and more drawn to the policy and the structural issues that affect people's lives. And so I started moving into more policy work. But at a very personal level, I myself was a refugee at the age of 10 years old. And it's the International Organization for Migration and the United Nations Human Rights Commissioner that saved my family and ourselves to be able to emigrate to Canada, which is where I grew up, and then be able to be part of getting an education, which is obviously one of the aims of the UN through UNICEF and so on and so forth. So very much for me, there was a combination of the personal understanding that the UN and its constituent agencies and bodies can make a very specific difference in people's lives. But then from my professional work experience, also seeing that some of the individual problems that people have really need a structural response. So from that perspective, having done a little bit of private practice, I very quickly moved into working with government. And for what it's worth, I worked also with the government where I moved to at that time. And over time, I then worked with the NGO sector, but then I joined the UN. And one of the reasons for that, again, to echo the words of my colleagues, is around the fact that the UN brings together many different practices, people who are very specific, whether it's health, whether it's IOM on migration, whether it's UN Women, and at that time it was UNIFEM. But it also brought together a multitude of nationalities. It brought together member states who have all different approaches in terms of understanding. So for me, the capacity of the world to have, first of all, a commitment to norms and standards that guarantee a certain way of life, or if not guarantee, aspire to a certain way of life as we express them now in the Sustainable Development Goals. Back then it was maybe the Millennium Development Goals. But also very importantly, a commitment to making sure that no matter where you're born, no matter your sex, no matter your gender, no matter your race, no matter your ethnicity, you are equal, you have human rights. And so I very much ascribe to the international human rights and the international norms and standards about how people should be treated and how people should be able to expect their personal development but well as community development. So to round that off, in terms of what's great about working to the UN, I have to tell you, this is my 5th duty station in around 13 years. I think I've had a very advantage of being able to work with, celebrate with, collaborate with nationalities of all kinds, both within the UN but based on the countries that I work, but also very importantly to learn about how the world can be better. You go to different places and find good things, you go to different places and find challenges, you move from one place to another and you're able to experience that. So in summary, the UN helps you to be aspirational. The UN helps you to affirm your belief in humanity and the rights and dignity that people should have. And it also helps you to do common good at a very personal level, from my own personal experience, but also at a structural level.
Thank you, Mrs. Amanda. It really is a celebration of the essence of each individual around the world. We move forward with Mrs. Christine Munotoni, who is the United Nations Resident Coordinator. I think we have heard so much goodness from each member of the family present today. Mrs. Christine, can you tell us what advice would you give to the young generation? Because we are looking into the future globally as we mark the 75th anniversary of the UN. And what would change, the change that we are all speaking about, what would change mean for the most vulnerable people, especially the youth in Mauritius?
Thank you very much. I think also I will pull from what everybody has already said. I think as we commemorate or celebrate the 75th anniversary of the UN, in fact, the main theme or the main drive or the message we get from the Secretary General is youth engagement for global action. You know, everybody knows that the future is the youth, and this is what inspires everyone. So my main message or advice, I should say, to the young people is to understand that every generation has a mission. Every generation has a mission. You have to define it and accomplish it. And looking at the 75 years, you will see maybe your grandparents or your parents or everybody and think, if we put it in Mauritius, you know, they got us a country, independent, a rainbow nation, where everybody from whichever region are living peacefully in harmony. There's no war in this country. The advice to the young people in this country is to sustain that and do better. But also it's very important for the young people to know that you are not leaders of tomorrow, you are leaders of today. And for that, I can give a personal testimony. I was a leader from when I was 19. And leadership does not only mean that you are a prime minister or you are a minister, but it's leader in your community, leader in action, leader in what you do. So I think young people need to know that you are a leader just now in what you can do. And if I can elaborate further, like when you realize a problem, you have to be part of the solution. I grew up like her as a refugee in a refugee camp after war. Now, as a young person, I could have decided that that defines me. And if that would define me, I would be defined by failure, by feeling sad about it, by victim, you know, victim mentality. But what do you do when you are a young person? You think about it, you want to be part of a solution. So for me, growing up, my dream was to have a homeland. You know, the day I held my passport for my country, and today I have even a red one, I said, you know, I would just kiss the ground and say, but I don't sit and say somebody will deliver me this country. I fight for peace in my country and for the reason to have my own country. So, but we could quote many examples. Another thing, most, you know, when I have a hot conversation with my daughter, and she's 24 years old, and she's saying, what happened to young people, I mean, old people these days? You know, you're not active, I'm telling you about this and that. I say, you know, we did our part. You know, we did our part, now it's your time. But what I could say, you inspire, young people need to know that you inspire the world. That's the reason everybody wakes up in the morning knowing that there is a future. If there wasn't that, why would you wake up? What would you look up to? But the fact that you look, and that's very nice that we have you on the panel, even as we are here, you inspire us in this conversation. But not only are you an inspiration, you are also, you are not only the inspiration for change, you also create the change. You are the ones responsible to create the change. And I know examples of countries like where the Minister for IT, for example, is 29 years old and brings these mega changes and everybody's, but she is the only one who understands what is called this, maybe the father or the mother understood about bringing peace in that country, but to build that country, to deal with technology, to do that, it's the young people. So I think I'll stop it there for now, but I think the main message really is to know that you need to hold a torch and you need to lead the world into prosperity.
And thank you, Mrs. Christine Numutoni, who is the resident coordinator of the United Nations. I think we are grateful for whatever you said, because we are going to be represented soon by the youth. And for that, as I said earlier, we have two youth representatives with us today. We have Ms. Richa Lachan and Mr. Zaki Karimji. Ladies first, we're going to start with Richa. Richa, we are in 2020. How do you imagine the world in the next 25 years? Are you more on the optimistic side or the pessimistic side? What have you planned? And how do you see the world in 25 years?
At the beginning, I was thinking of a more pessimistic side of the world. But with retrospection, I see a better world in 25 years. Because like I've been hearing, the youth is today. So if today is not good, then tomorrow will not be good. So I think that we can actually ponder about what has happened during the pandemic. During the pandemic, there have been some economic problems in many aspects of the world. But if I take this pandemic itself, I can say that with the pandemic, we can expect a better 25 years. I will say that in 25 years there will be better sanitation, better hygiene, food production will be better for many people, because the source of the pandemic itself was the food intake. So in 25 years I expect a world where food production will be equal for everyone, where famine will not exist. I can see a world in 25 years where there will be 100% literacy rate, because people will have access to education and will have access to quality education. And I expect that in 25 years, with the pandemic and with technology helping us, we can have better education, better medication, and even better healthcare. So I expect a better world.
That was very positive. Thank you, Ms. Richa. What about you, Mr. Zakir? What do you feel and how do you see the world in 25 years?
My comrade has portrayed a very positive tomorrow. As optimistic one can be, I oppose it. As tomorrow, in my head, is not tomorrow. As the current facts, such as the COVID-19, has showed us how vulnerable we are and how the leaders who are we supposed to inspire from are struggling. How the super countries around the world are struggling for peace and stability. How can one inspire to become better if what we are shown is not good? Where we don't really understand how this world is going today. The COVID-19 has shown how unstable the world is, how the economies around the world are fluctuating constantly. Just recently in France, someone wrote something about the Islam religion, an 18-year-old had the power to end his life. How can we accomplish a level of privacy and security in a world where our life are threatened every day? I have the chance of living in a country where I've been with all sorts of cultures. But people living in other countries don't have this opportunity as I do. As for example, in China, I had a friend of mine who went to a zoo. He was completely different from everybody and he got more attention than the animals inside. And that's just sad. That just shows how human is just so simple-minded that the indifferent of people doesn't make any more sense. I don't believe in a better tomorrow as I want to believe in it. But I can't. I can't afford of living a dream sold by older generations, where it's not my dream. It's a dream sold because there's nothing else to be sold. I want to create a dream, a world where maybe not ultimate peace or end famine really exists, but where I can raise my kids, and when the day I leave, I am happy with what they are left with.
Thank you, Mr. Zaki. I guess it's two extreme poles and two different opinions, which is going to shape the future, because I hope the positiveness that you brought can help shape the future in 25 years, and we can work hands in hands to make it better. So, to both of you, to youth representatives, I have a question for you. We are here with the UN family. What do you see as the role of the UN, and what is your own contributions at here? Sweet and simple, your own contribution.
First of all, the UN, you can see it as a more diplomatic parent figure. As a parent is someone who takes care of others. And the UN is a bit of the parent of the world, as it's the formation of all countries in the world together to promote peace, justice, equality, and equity. And the UN is such a powerful group which has the power to do so much. That's why I say it's a more diplomatic parent figure. As myself, like a month ago, I had a discussion at school, and what the people had said, what the representative had said, had really touched me in some way. It had brought a brighter tomorrow. I had thought of a more positive tomorrow where I was guaranteed a safer place. Thank you.
Okay, what will be your own contribution? Let's help you, and what
my
is
own
your
contribution will be maybe raising my kids properly. I've seen too much people, my peers, being given the wrong education. It's not because the parents were not able to, do so. The level of opportunity I had was incredible. And people suffering from poverty, suffering from difficult circumstances, they are difficult. And I wish not to do that to my children. And maybe form other young minds, or educate young minds who want this opportunity to get out of the zone they are. Because it's a vicious cycle for poverty. It's a vicious cycle which it's very difficult to get out. If you offer them a hand, even if it's one person, one child, on 100 you try to dig out, at least you are able to take one out of the vicious cycle. Exactly.
And what about you, Ms. Richa? What is your responsibility? What are you going to do for the next 25 years and help the UN make the lives of the people around the world better?
I see the UN as a tree, and the world as different leaves of the same tree. We are linked by those branches, by what the UN feeds to us. So I see the UN, as you said, Zakir, as a parent figure, a diplomatic parent figure. But that tree is full of life, and it should bloom at different seasons. We have our low seasons, like in winter. Sometimes the branches are not always alive, but we also have our spring, where there are flowers, and we have our summer. So I think that the UN is what gives life to our community, to our social community, to our economic community, and to different people around the world, despite the economical background or even the social background. We are bounded by, and we are binded by the UN. So I think that the UN, despite being a parental figure, is the life of the humanity that we have on Earth. Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Richa. I think before ending this panel discussion, I would like to go to each one of the UN family present here today to ask them, what do they feel and what changes do we need to make the next 25 years better? We start with you, Dr. Laurent Moussango. C'est quoi votre point de vue? Comment est-ce que vous voyez le monde dans les prochaines 25 ans et quels sont les changements qu'il faut qu'on emmène dans nos vies de tous les jours?
Ok, merci beaucoup, Anushka. Je pense que je vais aller sur le domaine de la santé, étant donné que je suis le représentant de la santé. Et j'ai un peu évoqué une partie en disant qu'on doit se préparer en renforçant le système. Mais le plus important, c'est plutôt le respect de ce qu'on appelle International Health Regulation. Être vraiment un seul monde qui considère la santé comme une entité sans frontières, sans barrières, et où nous pouvons nous entraider aussi bien dans les périodes de guerre, dans les périodes de conflit, et éviter d'utiliser la santé comme un outil politique. Plutôt, la santé doit être un outil qui nous unit plutôt qu'un outil qui nous sépare. Merci.
Merci, Dr. Laurent. Quant à vous, Mme Céline, vous en pensez quoi?
Alors, je pense que l'avenir, le meilleur reste à venir. Donc, je pense qu'en entendant nos jeunes leaders, beaucoup de choses positives en émanent. Qu'on ait voilà, une vision optimiste ou pessimiste, parce que c'est vrai que beaucoup de choses peuvent faire peur pour l'avenir. Beaucoup d'espoir aussi sont là devant nous. Il y a beaucoup d'opportunités à saisir. Et encore une fois, ce n'est pas uniquement en restant chacun dans son coin, mais vraiment en ayant cette solidarité qu'ensemble nous accomplirons beaucoup. Et il est également important, comme ça a été souligné, que chacun ait vraiment pleine conscience de son rôle individuel. Parfois, une action peut paraître comme une goutte d'eau, comme cela a été dit. Aider une personne peut tout changer parce que cette personne-là peut aussi changer beaucoup de choses. Et c'est vraiment en effet une réaction en chaîne. Et c'est comme ça en fait que tout se passe et que tout change. Donc je vois plutôt l'avenir
Que du positif ce matin. What about you, Mrs. Amanda Sirumaga? Say positive about the future.
I would have to fall on the side of positivity, and the reason being that we've done it before as humanity. The very founding of the UN was based on a collective decision to cease war, to pursue peace, to pursue equality. There was a time that women couldn't vote. There was a time that children were forced to work. There was a time that you could not have access because of your race, ethnicity, or religion. So clearly there was a time, and there have been times, when the world has come together and reckoned that they need to make a collective commitment and draw a line under different inequalities and discriminations and so on. So in terms of what needs to change over the next 25 years, I would want to echo the words and the sentiments that we're hearing from our UN Secretary General, as well as the head of UNDP, which is that we need to think about going back to the first principles of the UN. One, multilateralism matters, collective action matters. For small island developing states, if you look at pollution, for example, they are the least polluters but the greatest sufferers. So climate justice will come from the collective action of a different country to help the small island developing states do better. So the first point is, one, collective action, two, recommit to multilateralism. And just lastly, we do have the Sustainable Development Goals framework, and they're very specific goals, 17 of them. And for Mauritius and Seychelles and other small islands, very clearly the climate-related, Paris-related agreements about helping to manage the effects of climate change will be important. So, in summary, I'm optimistic. I think if it hadn't been the optimism of my parents, then we wouldn't be where we are. So I think I would encourage the youth to understand that history is long. And we also know that I think somebody once said the arc of history bends towards justice or something of that nature. So from that perspective, it must be, if we are to be inspired to make progress, you must believe that there will be a better future.
Thank you, Mrs. Amanda. Over to you, Mrs. Christine. You were about to give the youth of Mauritius advice, and you are going to tell us what are the changes that they can expect and what are the changes that we can expect.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, first of all, before I go to that, hearing from the two young people speak about the future we want or the future they see, I think it's quite clear that we are in safe hands. I think we're really in safe hands because even if you look at it critically about learning from the mistakes that are happening or challenges that are happening, it only means that you are looking at it like that because you want to fix it. Even if you want to look at it from an optimistic point of view, it's because you want to look at the glass half full and not half empty. and build on the good and do better. So I think really I feel good that we are in good hands with young people. And I think from the demonstration we talked about the tree, someone talked about a tree, and how you could be in winter or summer or what. I think that also with the fact that there are so many challenges going on only comes to highlight the fact that we will move into, you know, valleys and hills, but if we're in a general trajectory of moving forward, I think the trend is the most important. So I think we need to look at it like that, globally, and then understand that there could be ups and downs, but all pushing in the right direction. So it's really coming out very well, and I see it daily as a resident coordinator. The UN is arms of so many things happening, many agencies, many departments, many things working, everyone to better the world. And to me, it simply emphasizes, and I'm sure when you will Google and see the UN Charter, that it really emphasizes the point that it belongs, the UN belongs to you, not only belongs to you, but the UN is you. So the UN is all of us. But on vulnerability and what might change, what does change mean to vulnerable people? I think, first of all, what is vulnerability? I think normally, and if we can look at COVID or other problems, when people or even the environment or anything is placed in a situation where there is a lack of the ability to adapt, a lack of the ability to recover or to deal with a certain situation, or a lack of a voice, a lack of income, or lack of, there is always something, an insecurity somewhere. And I think the best way to deal with the vulnerability is to deal with that, because you will always have problems. You will fall and want to raise. But what is it that can make you be able to, when you fall, you can raise? That is how we can deal with vulnerabilities. And that's why I said from the very beginning that you be the change. But of course, organizations like the UN, governments, communities, everything, what needs to happen is, first of all, to even understand who is being left behind, who are the vulnerabilities. You cannot start a race and you haven't checked whether somebody in that race has a heart problem, or has a food problem, or could see well, or could then you will move, but only those who can move will move with the rest of the flow, and the others will be left behind. So that lens to always focus on. I was giving an example in one panel about how Mauritius did very well on the elderly during COVID, with specific measures. You go to take your medicine here, the mobile clinic is brought to you. The post was running, taking them their check. And that is how you zoom in to a vulnerability, and then you make sure you're on the same pace. So I think then the rest of what the systems need to do is to provide the conducive environment, the laws, is to live by example, is to understand the dynamics. But actually, I think what change would mean, for example, I just visited a network of schools in this country. I was so impressed. Normally success for young people is defined as you pass primary, even you pass secondary. If you fail in primary, then you are a dropout, and then you are not successful. In this particular setting, they have redefined success. So, they pick those kids who are normally called dropouts and re-educate them, give them a second chance, and out of those actually we have fantastic paintings, fantastic piece of work, but also a new chance. Some of them have gone back to school and have actually now gone to university. But that moment when somebody feels that they can't make it, and then you raise them and you create an opportunity, you redefine success, and you make them redefine for themselves what success is. For me, I think, whether looking at young people, elderly, the environment, or the different categories, that is what I mean, what change will do, and I think that is the responsibility of everyone. You know, either those in policy making, or even the young people themselves, or whoever is in that situation. And I will end with one thing, because sometimes when we talk about vulnerable, people will want to place themselves in a victim basket. This thing called vulnerability is very temporary. It depends on how you sit and look at it, how you design your life, because the life is a long stretch of the future. And a temporary moment called vulnerability cannot define anyone. I will always repeat it. It cannot, if you find yourself, you missed school this time, it means you can catch up next year. If you find yourself you couldn't pass this, maybe you can do art. If you find yourself in problem A and B and you place yourself in a problem, maybe there's a solution tomorrow. You know, you find there's COVID now, a vaccine is coming. So I think if we place it in that way, we will know that we zoom and be able to care and know that we have to look for these vulnerable people, then we can all live a future where we leave no one behind.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It was a pleasure and honor to be with you today. We are ending on a positive note this morning. We are redefining success. The road is long, but as long as we keep on walking, the job is going to be done. Thank you.